another guy that never stops working, and many people thought would be running for president, but was quickly to say, my family's too young, I'm not going to do it. But is right in the middle of this Wuhan story is Senator Tom Cotton, obviously a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. And Senator, you were on our show, and one of the first things when this pandemic hit, you were telling President Trump, this is real, shut down the flights from China to America because this pandemic is coming our direction, and you were always convinced this was coming from the lab. Do you feel as though, what was your information then, and how do you feel today?
Well, Brian, thank you for that. From the very beginning, I believe this virus almost certainly came from a lab. I thought it was just a matter of common sense. You didn't need secret intelligence or classified information just to look at the facts. You had a food market that the Chinese communists were saying was the source of the virus that didn't even sell bats in an area where bats were not located. And then you had a laboratory where they were known to focus and work with bat-based coronaviruses that had had a history, like many Chinese labs, of safety incidents. Again, to me, it was just a matter of common sense. But what did the liberal media and what did Joe Biden and other Democrats do? When you point these things out, they called you a racist or a xenophobe. They said you were spreading conspiracy theories and all the rest. And now, 3 years on, I think most Americans recognize that it almost certainly came from that laboratory, that the Chinese communists covered it up, and that you still have the liberal media and Democrats acting like lawyers for Chinese communists, trying to excuse them, trying to say, well, there's not much consensus. We're not know for sure, much like they did a couple weeks ago when China sent a spy balloon to America. And you had people in Joe Biden's administration saying, well, maybe it was just blown off course by strong winds. The kind of deliberate obfuscation and excuse-making for China that we saw 3 years ago about this lab incident and that we saw a couple weeks ago about the balloon that flew over across America is dangerous for the American people because it encourages Chinese communists to think that America will not stand up to their provocations.
So, Senator, I'm just curious because the White House, when asked to respond about this report from their Department of Energy, from their department, from their FBI, they said they haven't reached a consensus. So I'm just curious, have you been briefed on what agency is saying something different?
Yeah, Lawrence, this is an example of what I mean of Joe Biden and his White House officials bending over backwards to make excuses and apologize for Chinese communists, almost act as their lawyer. Look, the reports out in the media in the last few days have said that intelligence offices in the Department of Energy have now concluded it most likely came from the laboratory. Media reports have long said that about the FBI. There's some other agencies that have asserted that they don't have enough information to draw a conclusion. I'll be getting briefed more on this week once we're back in the Capitol and have access to the classified information. But as I've said all along, there is literally no evidence whatsoever, except for the word of Chinese communists that this virus originated in a food market. All the other evidence, may be circumstantial, but all the other evidence and your common sense points towards the lab. Yet you still have liberals in the media and the Biden administration acting like a defense lawyer for the Chinese communists, covering up for them, apologizing for them, excusing them, acting like we can turn the page when millions of Americans lost loved ones, lost businesses, lost jobs, and we have not yet held China accountable for all of that harm.
Senator, we want to ask you about the Afghan report, but I want to ask you really quickly, why? Why do you have so many people on the left that aren't even interested in learning about this scientific information?
Well, I think it's at least twofold, Ainsley. One is that you have conservative Republicans like me saying it, and if we're saying it, they have to man the ramparts for whatever.
So they're going to say what China says?
Whomever we're making these charges. Exactly. So, well, just look at what they did with that balloon, Ainsley. Yeah. China sent a spy balloon to America. That's obvious. No question about it. And they're saying that it got blown off course from Guam to Alaska. That's one heck of a win, Ainsley. Yet they're willing to man the ramparts to defend the Chinese communists because they don't want to say, well, oh, Tom Cotton or other conservative Republicans had this right from the beginning. You still see that in liberal media outlets like the Washington Post and the New York Times and CNN. I think a second reason is that they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to take what they would consider provocative action. They're trying to smooth the waters with the Chinese communists when the Chinese communists are continuing their aggression against the American people and our economic well-being and our national security.
Well, should I ask you about the Afghan report?
I'll tell you what,
go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, Senator, I tell you, Anthony Fauci last night still says it didn't come from the lab. So
know.
he's not budging. I got a few diners here that want to ask you a couple of questions, if that's okay, Senator. Take a question from Florida.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that all right?
Of course, Brian.
What's your name, sir?
My name is John.
All right, John Reardon, look into that camera. And ask Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas a question.
Senator Cotton, first of all, we want to thank you for standing up for the truth very early and not wavering when all the liberal media outlets were going against reality and the truth.
Quick question.
So I want to thank you. How do you feel feeling vindicated for standing up for the truth for America and Americans?
Well, John, thanks
Feel
for the very
vindicated?
kind words. It's nice that more and more people are beginning to see the truth, that what most Americans felt. I have to say, I don't really feel like the liberal media can vindicate me. I was right all along. Most Americans were right all along. What I want to do is vindicate the interests and the honor of the American people who were harmed by Chinese wrongdoing, who lost their jobs, who lost their businesses, who lost loved ones. That's the vindication I really want.
So he says he just wants those people that lost loved ones. That was the kid.
Absolutely. Prayers for them all, for misinformation from everywhere.
Senator doesn't need a pat on the back, but he definitely deserves one. All right, Ron, you have a question for Senator Tom Cotton.
I do. America needs your voice, Senator. How did you lose your last race, and what will it take for?
Well, he didn't lose, but the Republicans did not take the Senate.
What's it going to take to win the Senate back for Republicans?
So he wants to know what's it going to take to win the Senate back for Republicans next time around. Is it a favorable map, Senator?
Yeah, actually, the 2024 map looks pretty good for us. We've got great candidates who are starting to come out and run in places like Indiana and West Virginia and Ohio and Montana, places where you had Democrats running in states that Donald Trump won twice, sometimes by large margins. I think as the chickens come home to roost from Joe Biden's policy and inflation continues, crime increases, America is disrespected in the world, the American people are going to be ready for a change next year, not just in the Senate, but in the White House as well.
Right. Thanks so much, Ron. And he says the favorable map, he's optimistic. That's who you should know. Okay. Senator, something else that you can relate to as a guy who first served in the infantry. The new study came out that we left $7.2 billion worth of military equipment in Afghanistan, as well as losing American lives in the process. Your reaction to this, and where are the hearings for this? What questions do you still have about this?
Well, Brian, as you said, the really tragic loss is the 13 brave Americans who died in Afghanistan as a result of the president's poor planning and lack of foresight, lack of coordination. The new report that came out just yesterday makes all that clear. Again, I think most Americans seeing what happened in August of 2021 recognize that Joe Biden had not taken the steps necessary to have an orderly and safe withdrawal from Afghanistan. Of course, we left billions of equipment there as well that the Taliban now have. That's one reason why Joe Biden's polling numbers fell in the immediate aftermath of that chaotic withdrawal, and they've never recovered because it undermined the American people's confidence in Joe Biden's leadership. It's also one reason why Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, while China is rattling the sabers around Taiwan, while North Korea is threatening South Korea with tactical nuclear weapons. It's what you might call an Afghan effect. It emboldened our adversaries all around the world because they believe this president is not up to the task of protecting America's national security.
Thanks so much, Senator. Thanks so much for joining the senator from the great state of Arkansas. Thanks, Tom Cotton.